Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Wanted to do a quick little overview of the essentially finished 392 Hemi swap into the JK. So we're going to go through some of the details of what it took to do the swap and kind of just go over the whole Jeep. Give everyone kind of a rundown of things they might need to do when doing the swap, things they might need to look out for. But let's wash the Jeep first because it is still dirty from Trail Hero and there's still a lot of sand in it. So if this is one of the swaps that you were wanting to do, keep watching to see how mine turned out. And watch to the end to see my recommendations on doing the swap. Alright, now that we got the Jeep nice and clean, we can kind of go over the build. So what we did is a 392 Hemi. A lot of people can do the 5.7. I knew I was going to want more power. I put it in, installed it, realized I had 4 cracked pistons. It's kind of actually a common thing with these 6.4s. So I had to rebuild it. I added the Mark 82 cam and did forged pistons. And then I got it tuned from FRP or Flying Ryan Performance Tuning. Make sure you reach out to Jeep Speed Shop when you're ready or getting ready to start this project. You can actually set up to call them online and also get on their Facebook page. They are very helpful and everyone there is very helpful. A lot of different companies use different intake manifolds. That way they can relocate the air intake to the passenger side. But I kept it on the driver's side, and then I used a universal windshield washer fluid and put it on the passenger side. And then I cut the battery tray to fit the actual battery there with the Hemi. I didn't buy an extra or aftermarket battery tray. That fit that battery just perfect. Fit the hydro assist. I was able to make a little bracket to hold this guy right here. Run the AC lines, computers right here. And then I made a cold air, or kind of a cold air intake. One thing with these Hemis, there's not a lot of room between the fan and the belts. So I did have to extend the actual grill forward a little bit. You can see the difference there. It does stick out a little bit further in the bottom also. Probably figure out a way to get that better aligned. I did use the stock 3.6 radiator fan and this thing works great. I have had 0 overheating issues. I did the 180-degree thermostat. I set my temperatures usually for the fan to come on about 186. Usually holds about 199 if you're really pushing it hard. Hottest I've seen this get to was 204. And that was in the sand dunes at Sand Hollow. So even with all of that, there was no overheating. Coolant temperature stayed about 199, and transmission stayed about 201, 204 at the max, but mostly 199. So that was perfect. I know a lot of people ask questions about what battery to use. I actually just use the AGM from Walmart, and that has been really good for both of my vehicles. I did get these battery clamps from Amazon, and I actually love them. A lot of space for different connections. As far as the radiator goes, I went with the Northern radiator sold at Jeep Speed Shop. That is a good radiator. And then for the transmission, I went the Amazon route, but essentially it's the same brand that B&M, or makes the B&M radiators. This thing was $100, and it's like 44,000 BTU cooling. So that is a good purchase. Transmission, even throughout all the sand at Sand Hollow, it didn't get over 201, and the normal range is 199. You can see that it's fairly close, the lower radiator hose to the actual alternator pulley. That's one thing I don't really like. It's a little scary. I'm waiting for it to just blow the hose. But yeah, that's one thing about the 6.4 alternator location that you got to watch out for. And I have the motor in the top frame mounts. That way this alternator doesn't get any closer to it. I do run a oil catch can on this guy. Just a cheap eBay one, but it works fine. As far as transmission cooler lines, I did go the JL 392 cooler lines, and then I just adapted them to the right size hose just to run them through just to the front cooler. One suggestion I do have for people when they're installing the motor, I took off the air intake. That way you don't have to deal with accidentally damaging it when you're lifting the motor into there. I did that, and also allowed me to run the actual wiring harness for the motor under the air intake. Kind of made it for a cleaner install. So that's one suggestion I have for people. Here are those 392 JL oil cooler lines, transmission cooler lines. Those route very nicely. You got to get this little adapter plate. I actually got mine from eBay. And then you got to change the oil pan. If you get the motor from a car, then you have to change the oil pan. I'm running the 8HP70 now. I actually have the stock transmission pan on there. I just kept it stock. Keep it simple. I've got the 6.1 liter headers out of a Jeep Grand Cherokee. Those actually fit pretty nice. Got the exhaust routed towards the back, and then it collects here. And then it just dumps out right before the axle. Eventually I'm going to run it. I'll run it up over the axle and dump out the rear. I did go with a non-Rubicon transfer case. That way my gearing's not too low in first gear with the HP70. And the way I routed the exhaust is directly over towards the driver's side. I didn't come kind of behind here. Some people bring it here and then connect it. I just went right over. Alright, let's go to the inside. I just mounted a AFR gauge to where the stock tweeter was. Put it on a switch, that way you don't always need to have it on. Okay, and then as far as the shifter goes, I grab it out of a Dodge Charger. I made my own little shift boot here, that way it's just kind of nice factory looking. Alright, and here's kind of one of the cool things that I added. I put a sport mode button in for the transmission. It turns to red when you click it, that way you know it's actually activated. And what that does is changes the shift settings and the shift pressures, shift timing of your transmission. I do have videos on how to open that up using the software in the transmission and using HP tuners, how to change those settings. All the linkages for the four-wheel drive all work good. Everything basically works factory. All the settings in the all the settings in the computer work good. So if I want to go and see coolant temperature, oil temperature, or oil pressure, transmission temp, it's all in the dash just like it was from the factory. Overall, drivability of this Jeep has actually gotten better, especially with doing the 8-speed. Originally, I put the Nag 1 in behind the 6.4, and it was alright, but the gearing, I had too low of gearing on it. So when I'd be doing like 70 miles per hour, my RPMs would be screaming. So I changed it to the 8-speed, and that really just made overall the whole drivability much better. So let's take it for a drive and see how we like it. Talk about drivability while driving. This 8-speed, it shifts so nice. Let me put it in sport mode, and I mean, it's 40% throttle, that little bit right there, and it goes. Even downshifting. It's almost scary, but it is fun. A little Honda trying to race. This thing did good driving all the way to Colorado from Phoenix. That was a good 11-hour drive. And then even going up to Trail Hero, up to Hurricane, Utah, that was a good 8-hour drive. On the highway, this thing does good. You can see I'm doing 55 miles an hour, and I'm at like 1750 RPMs. So on the highway, the RPMs aren't even that bad. flip it into manual mode and it's even more fun. Definitely a lot of things that I like about the 8-speed. It shifts very quick. It's very efficient actually. Gas mileage has been better since the Nag 1, and you definitely feel the power more with the 8-speed. Shift into regular mode. Once you flip it to sport mode, it shifts even faster. So some things that a lot of people ask are what, like for instance, power steering box do I have? I actually have the big bore, a whole big bore steering box, and the aftermarket power steering pump from PSC. But the pump bolted right onto the engine block, so that made it nice. This thing just drives good. You know, give it a little bit of gas, it'll move. Give it a little more, it'll downshift. Before I made the changes to the shift timing or shift scheduling, you'd have to actually give it a lot of throttle input to downshift. But now that is fixed and it drives good. And it's got plenty of power to even get out of its own way. So overall, doing this project is a very fun project, but I do have a couple pieces of advice. First off, I would do lots of research before actually starting the project, before purchasing items. You don't want to purchase things twice because you grabbed the wrong one, or grabbed the wrong motor or transmission. I would start with there, using YouTube and Jeep Speed Shop and their Jeep Speed Shop Facebook group. There's lots of good online resources that kind of go over the whole Hemi swap. I've got a good amount of videos. Ben, JK Gear and Gadgets, has very thorough videos. So I would start there doing your research. Second, I would choose what size motor you end up wanting to go with. If you want to do the big boy 392, that's a good option. It's a definitely more expensive option. You can get 5.7 motors for like what, $3,000 with barely any miles on them. The 392s are closer to like $8-9 grand. But definitely know what you're gonna want to do. If you need to add more power, or if you're gonna want more power, you can upgrade the 5.7, do a cam and a tune. So the 6.4 isn't 100% necessary. I wouldn't have done it differently because I just know I'd want more power. The other things you need to kind of decide when doing this swap is what transmission you want to use. If you have the factory Nag 1, that actually you can buy a different bell housing and make it bolt right up to the V8. That's not a bad option. It's a good transmission, but if you really want to go all in, the 8-speed is hands down a much better transmission. It will cost a little bit more because you gotta get the wiring harness for the 8-speed, and then you gotta get the controller from the 8-speed or for the 8-speed. But that's just kind of a better transmission overall, but not necessary. If you want to do the Rubicon or non-Rubicon transfer case, that's kind of the next option you have to figure out. If you're doing the Nag 1, you can actually use whatever transfer case you have. But if you do switch to the 8-speed, then there's certain transfer cases that you need to use. Let's just put it this way. Anything that bolts up to a Nag 1 will not bolt up to the actual 8-speed. Other than that, any transfer case should work. Let's say it's on a manual. Any of the manuals should work. The 07 to 11 transfer cases that are in the automatic or behind the automatic transmissions, those work also. The next thing you're gonna have to kind of figure out is what exhaust you want to go with. I originally did the log tube exhaust, not long tube, log tube exhaust, and then I upgraded to the 6.1 header. So kind of figure out what you want to go with, if you want to start with the recommendations or go kind of out there a little bit and do your own thing. Then you can figure out what motor mounts you want to go with. I saved a bit of money and did the weld-in mounts, and I like them. I already had a welder and everything, so that was easy for me. Radiator is kind of one of the other things you're going to have to figure out. I don't even think you can use the stock radiator from the 3.6, but I would highly not recommend it, and I would definitely recommend getting the radiator from Jeep Speed Shop, the Northern radiator. It's a solid radiator, no issues with that. And then definitely the ECM and the wiring harness will come from Jeep Speed Shop. That is what I recommend. They have a very clean harness. The everything, all the wiring is nice and loomed up, and everything's protected. Everything's lengthened to fit where it needs to fit. That way you're not stuck with a lot of extra wiring in different areas. Other than that, those are my few recommendations for doing this swap on your own. It's definitely doable, and it's a fun project. Other than that, thanks for watching. Go ahead and look through my channel for any other useful videos, and again, thanks for watching.